Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to talk about the Maple Leaf prospect pool. I did a video yesterday talking about the three players who are representing the Maple Leafs in the World Junior Championship Tournament in Topi Niemela, Roni Irvinen, and Matthew Knies. But in today's video, I want to talk about the rest of the prospect pool as a whole and some misconceptions and some false narratives surrounding some specific players, because the belief seems to be that the Leafs don't have any prospects, or that they don't have any good ones, or ones that other teams would want in trades, and that's just not true at all. The first one that we're going to be talking about here is a big one, and it's been popular over the last 6 months or so, especially whenever I mention drafting or prospects in the Leafs, it always gets brought up. The fact that they only had 3 picks in last year's draft. First of all, what are 18 and 19-year-olds going to do to help this organization right now, other than be trade bait or be 2 to 3 years away from making an impact at best? And people who bring that up conveniently gloss over the fact that they had 12 draft picks the year before that, and that's 15 over the last 2 years, and you get 7 draft picks each year. So if they would have just kept all of their original ones, that would have been 14. They picked 15 guys, not to mention all the guys that they invite to development camp and just sign for free. When it comes to prospects, quantity is important, right? The more lottery balls that you can put into the lottery machine, the better chances that you have at winning a jackpot. But it's never been quantity over quality. It still is quality over quantity. And if you watched my video from yesterday, you'd know that the Maple Leafs found a real talent towards the end of the second round in last year's draft with Matthew Knies. And potentially, maybe even twice the year before that with Roni Irvinen and Topi Niemela, especially when you look at the context and compare them to players their own age from years past playing in the same league that they're playing in right now. It looks really promising. If you don't believe me, go ahead and check out that video that I did yesterday. I'll be honest, they don't really have anyone who looks like is going to be a top-line forward right now, or a top-pairing defenseman, or a starting goalie. And if you are as specific as to say so, then I wouldn't say that you're wrong, but those guys are kind of rare, right? And that doesn't mean that the Leafs don't have guys who can maybe play on their second or third line, or play in the top 4 of their defensive pairings, or even their top 6. Those guys are useful, right? And if you have a steady stream of guys coming out of your prospect pool to fill roles like that, it allows you to not have to hang on to guys like Janssen and Kapanen and Kerfoot and Justin Hall for longer than what you need to, right? You can filter those guys out that are making $2-3 million, and especially with the Leafs, with how much money they're paying their forwards, you need a steady stream of guys making $925,000 on their entry-level deals. And if you don't, you're going to have problems if there's a big gap. And there has been, where they've had to lean on veteran players and getting deals in free agency and having guys come over from Europe and fill spots. And, maybe they get lucky and someone has a career year. But you can't constantly keep placing bets like that. You need your young guys to turn out. And if you're looking at the drafts from the last couple of years, this is another problem. I'm not going to blame guys from 2020 for not being in the NHL right now. In 2019, those guys are still just 20, 21 years old. The same thing 2018, those guys are like 21, 22. But 2017, outside of the first round, nothing. Not many of those guys are even with the organization still. 2016 is even worse outside of the first round. Even less of these guys are still with the organization. In 2015, outside of the first round, aside from Travis Dermott, there's not really a whole lot there. And that's on everyone. That's on Lou Lamoriello, Mark Hunter, and Kyle Dubas as well. And if you're looking at the draft in recent years, yeah, there's names that look like they could be something, but there's not really anyone who's NHL ready. And it doesn't help that the one guy who is Nick Robertson has been injured basically all year. Something else that adds to that misconception that the Leafs don't have any good prospects is the fact that their good ones just don't play in the Canadian Hockey League. And there is a bias centered around that. Guys like Matthew Knies and Rodi Namirov and Roni Irvinen and Topi Niemela and Axel Rindell and Mikko Kokkonen and Timothy Lilligren is probably the best example of it, right? He spent his age 18 season playing for the Toronto Marlies. He didn't play in the Canadian Hockey League at all. I'm sure it would have been really impressive if he would have played in the CHL and had 60 or 70 points every year and just beat up on 17 and 18-year-olds, but that's not what he did. He played for the American Hockey League team at age 18 and won a Calder Cup playing on their third pair, and his role gradually increased ever since then. We've done this in the past for Timothy Lilligren, but we're going to do it again here, and we did this at yesterday's video for Topi Naimela. And what's on the screen right now are individual seasons from the American Hockey League in the case of Lilligren for defensemen that were under the age of 20, a minimum of 20 games played, and it's sorted by points per game. And Lilligren owns 2 of the top 22 seasons here. And if you're looking at the other names that he's in company with here, there are defensemen on this list that have gone on to have good NHL careers. And the fact that the Leafs spent a great deal of time developing his defensive game in the American Hockey League and killing penalties, and we're now seeing that at the NHL level, he does have a capability of playing on both ends of the ice. And the fact that Rasmus Sandin is also on this list and much higher than Timothy Lilligren doesn't mean that Lilligren was bad. And I said that as much when I did videos about this a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever it was. There's multiple of them. You can go look them up if you want to. I used the exact same list and the exact same filter here. And it was just so popular and trendy to say, okay, we'll package Lilligren in a first-round pick and we'll just take any old top 4 defenseman we can get our hands on. And it's like, aren't you glad that they held on to him? Because he is a top 6 defenseman right now, and he's 22 years old, and we're just scratching the surface on his potential. He's getting better and better every single game he plays. You can't just look at the point totals. You need to look at the league that the player is playing in, the role that they're playing on their team. Is their team good or bad? I mean, Mikhail Abramov a couple of years ago, what stood out about him so much is that playing for the Victoriaville Tigers out of the QMJHL, he led his team in scoring by 35 points the one year. And he became captain of that team. And yeah, he's been okay with the Marlies, but he also hasn't played a lot of hockey the last couple of seasons. Rodion Amirov, to me, is another great example of this, because it's really easy to look at his point totals and just say that he sucks. To ask the question, why'd they draft this guy in the first round 2 years ago when they could have had this guy, that guy, or the other guy who's maybe on Team Canada right now or very successful in the Canadian Hockey League at this point? And to that, I would just say that there's a bigger picture to be looked at in more context than just his point totals. He's just coming back from injury right now, but at the end of this season, it'll be his 3rd year playing in the 2nd best professional men's league in the world at just the age of 20. And that means something to have that experience. The KHL also isn't the friendliest for player development. It's a rarity just for a guy his age to have played the amount of games that he has so far. And unless you're Alex Ovechkin or Evgeny Malkin, it's 12, 13, 14 minutes a night on your team's 4th line. They don't believe in giving younger players large roles on their teams. And if you're a guy who's already committed to coming over to North America, there's politics involved there with some teams where they could bury you. And there's nothing that you can really do about it. You're just healthy scratched. You're being played on the 4th line. You're not being given opportunities. And there is a deal in place between the agent, the player, and the Leafs where he's going to come over at the end of his KHL season and play games for the Marlies. Maybe even do a training camp or something like that. It's a step in the right direction. I don't know if that's something that's still going to happen with just like scheduling conflicts or quarantining or traveling right now. But it's encouraging that that is in place. And I don't know why, you could say that the Leafs suck defensively. Okay, yeah, fine. But then they draft a forward who's known for his two-way game, who has a 200-foot game, is good defensively. And then that just gets completely ignored. And the only thing that gets talked about is his point totals. It doesn't make any sense, especially when he was drafted. There was a lot of scouts who were heavily praising him for his defensive game, and that just got completely overlooked. I apologize for the audio in this clip. I'm just recording this before I start my shift at work, actually, and then I'm going to add it into the video. But I wanted to mention the save percentages from the KHL from last season, because there are 18 goalies here who had a save percentage above 920. It's not a very high-scoring league. And for a guy like Rodion Amirov, like we said, who's more than likely playing on his team's 4th line, playing 13, 14, maybe 15 minutes a night if he's absolutely lucky, I just wouldn't look at his point totals as an indicator as to how his development is going and how good he is. Once he comes over to North America, I'm fully expecting him to light the American Hockey League on fire. A guy that I would keep on your radar and just check in on every once in a while is Ty Voigt. The Maple Leafs drafted him in the 5th round in last year's draft, where they only had 3 picks. Matthew Nyes, Ty Voigt. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And the other one being a goalie. Goalies are kind of voodoo. We may not know much about him for a while until he just comes out of nowhere and is either good or we just never hear from him at all. But Ty Voigt, 5'10" and 161 pounds. He is a winger. He is a smaller player, but when you're reading the scouting report that Elite Prospects has on here, and we'll read a couple of other scouting reports as well that I included in the video that I did when the Maple Leafs first drafted him, they really do hold true when you're watching highlights, and I'll leave a couple of those linked in the description down below. This is from my video when they first drafted here, but Brock Otten, he writes for McKean's Hockey here. A couple of other teases. First, Ty Voigt has to be considered one of the most individually skilled players out of the OHL for this year's draft. He may not be the biggest or the strongest, but he is a master manipulator of space and elevates the play of those around him. And trust me, when you're watching those highlights, he definitely does do that. In another tweet after the Maple Leafs drafted him, Brock goes on to say, in Ty Voigt, the Maple Leafs are getting one of the draft's premier playmakers. Truly believe that if the OHL plays, because they didn't have a season last year, Ty Voigt didn't get to play a hockey game last year, that he's a top 2-round selection. Insane vision and precision on his passes, more shifty, strong edge work than quick, massive potential, great pick. He's 18 years old right now, and because his birthday's in June, that would mean that during that 2019-2020 season where he had 28 points in 49 games, he was 16 years old for the entirety of that year. And judging by this heat map from those games, even at 16 years old, playing in the Ontario Hockey League and being really undersized compared to the rest of the competition, he didn't shy away to go to the front of the net, and he definitely doesn't in the highlights that I have listed in the description there. Seriously, we haven't had hockey for a while. Go ahead and check out those highlights and see what this kid's able to do. He's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. But that is going to be it for the video, guys. I would have liked to have talked about a couple of more prospects, but I don't want to make the video too long, and we can also just do another video on another day. It's not that big of a deal. If you enjoyed this one, let me know down in the comment section, and also leave me a like on the video and subscribe if you really enjoyed it. Because these videos about prospects, they do take a little bit more time to put together just because the information isn't always as readily available, especially when it comes to Canadian Hockey League players, because they like to keep their stats pretty locked up. But make sure to like the video if you did like, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.